Welcome back to Give Me Liberty TV. I'm W.A. Mitchell, your host, and with us today is Representative Charles Key from the great state of Oklahoma. He was here in Lincoln today to testify at Senator Tony Fulton's introduction of the 10th Amendment resolution. Welcome.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
Thank you for being here, and thank you for testifying at what I consider a fairly important resolution. Now, we both know that there's not going to be a lot of teeth in this for the federal government, but it's just to reaffirm the fact that Nebraska says, federal government, back off a little bit. I understand that you were the co-author or author of the resolution in Oklahoma. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I was the author of the 10th Amendment resolution in Oklahoma. And just to pick up on how you characterize the bill for the viewers, this is a lot like, and this is the way I've described it, it's a lot like when you have a landlord and a tenant, say, that have a contract, and they have a contract that specifies the different details of conditions of that contract, how much the rent's going to be, who's responsible for what, et cetera, et cetera. And if the tenant, for example, doesn't pay the rent, the landlord either can't or doesn't just come in and kick out the tenant all of a sudden. What usually will happen is he'll make a phone call, maybe come by and say, hey, I haven't got your rent payment yet. Are you going to send that to me? Usually that takes care of the problem and everything's okay. Or other parts of the contract, usually there's a communication. But we all know what happens if someone refuses to pay their rent over a long period of time. Eventually there's an eviction notice, or there's a certified letter that comes in the mail before the eviction notice. And this is much like a notice, an official notice that says, hey, the Constitution of the United States is the supreme law of the land. It specifies what all parties can and cannot do, the federal government and the states. And federal government, you've been violating what the Constitution says you can do.
Right, and the 18 enumerated powers of the federal government. And you agree that they've maybe a little bit overstepped their bounds?
Definitely, they've way overstepped their bounds, and I think people all over this country are realizing that more and more, that they have overstepped their bounds so much over the last few decades, and over the last decade in particular, that they're really kind of out of control now.
Well, I think I'd go back a little bit further than that, but we can agree to disagree on that one. How do you feel about, using your Oklahoma common sense? I mean, describe why we're doing this, why Oklahoma did this, why Nebraska should endorse this resolution to reaffirm the 10th Amendment.
Well, the Constitution is the supreme law of the land.
Okay.
No one is above the Constitution, and no institution, such as the Congress. A lot of people don't know that, or they've forgotten it, that the federal government is not the supreme power in this country. It's the Constitution.
Right. And
everyone and every institution, the Congress, the President, even the Supreme Court, must follow the Constitution. If they don't, then they have violated the supreme law of the land.
That's true.
So the Constitution either means what it says, in answer to your question, or it doesn't mean anything. And as either of the parties violate the Constitution, at some point it ceases to have any meaning unless we get back to what the Constitution says and follow it.
And it's not up to politicians to push us back that way. It's not up to the courts to push us back that way. It's up to we, the people.
We, the people.
Do you agree with that?
I agree with it 100%.
Outstanding. Is there any other insight that, well, I want you to make the plea, because I've done it several times over the last few shows that we've done, and tell Nebraskans that why they should support this resolution.
Well, government, we have all of the history of mankind to look at. History teaches us something about us, we people, and it teaches us something about government. We can look at those people that we call the founding fathers or the framers of the Constitution. They were very learned men. They were historians. They were lawyers. They were experts in the law and in religion and in human relations. And they knew that government was a force, as to paraphrase George Washington. government is like a consuming fire. It's a force. And there's been many other statements of that by people throughout our history, including the Founding Fathers. My point is this, is that government will not do what it's supposed to do unless people, the citizens, hold it accountable and require that it do what they want it to do and what it's supposed to do. Its first charge is to uphold the Constitution. Every elected official at every level takes an oath to uphold the Constitution. Many of those oaths also include to uphold the Constitution against enemies, foreign and domestic. And we're real good about figuring out who the foreign enemies are. It's time we start talking about what does it mean, the domestic enemies to the Constitution. What can that possibly include or mean? I think it includes and means when any of us, whether intentionally or even unintentionally, we violate the Constitution and we start changing the system of government we have in this country. When we do that, there's less freedom. People lose simple freedoms and they lose major freedoms. They lose property. They lose the ability to make determinations about their lives, how they can live their lives.
And lose more than that, and up to and including liberty.
Yeah.
We went to a symposium a few weeks back where we had the honor to talk to Judge Napolitano. And after the symposium broke up, we attended a seminar by a constitutional scholar by the name of Glenn Freeman. If you ever get a chance, listen to him. He's a marvelous man.
I actually got a chance to sit in one of his meetings there at that symposium.
Oh, you did? Outstanding, man.
Yeah.
So did you, at the handout that he had the 28th Amendment. And basically what it said is Congress shall not introduce any bill unless they can justify it through the Constitution. Would you support something like that?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
As a matter of fact, our U.S. Senator Tom Coburn has a similar bill that says before Congress can pass a law, it must show show that it has the authority to do so in the Constitution.
Well, I tell you what, the next time you see him, you thank him, not only for me, but for all our friends at GML-TV.
Okay.
There was some testimony, not testimony, but some remarks made by the committee members that this 10th Amendment resolution could become controversial in whether it be states' rights or some states pushing an agenda and then disguising it in the 10th Amendment. Is this resolution controversial in